Hello friends, my name is Ness and things are crazy. I knew that they would be at the beginning of this year because my schedule is kind of nuts. I've been doing my best to get a handle on everything and just kind of get into a routine. That said, I did have a really wonderful reading month. I ended up reading 9 things in the form of 8 books and 1 graphic novel for a total of 3,640 pages. My average rating this month was 4.06. I was very much enjoying most of what I read. I've changed the way that I do wrap-ups, so I've already wrapped up books 1 through 6, and the next wrap-up is forthcoming. In this video, I just wanted to rank what I read and give a bigger scope of everything that I read in the month of January. Coming in at number 9 is Rebel Spring by Rhodes, a just about average YA fantasy book that ends up choking its own story a lot of the time with too many words and too many drawn out explanations. Number 8 is Shadowshaper by Daniel Jose Older. This is a YA urban fantasy book that unfortunately never fully realized the potential of its plot or characters, but that did move very quickly and made me interested in Older as an author. Number 7 is Fables, the Deluxe Edition, Book 2. This is about fairy tale characters living in New York City, and so far it has charmed me with its dark and gruesome and offbeat fairy tale retellings. Number 6 is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, a YA sci-fi that I've reread for the 3rd time. While the story struggles with some plot devices like withholding key information and a mustache-twirling kind of villain, I do really love the 2 main characters in this book, and their journey and growth makes up for a lot of where the plot falters, though that stuff is really evident as you're reading through it. Number 5 is Career of Evil by Robert Galbraith. This is an adult mystery novel, number 3 in a series, and I am just fully invested in the characters, even if the plots can become a little convoluted because they are very suspect heavy. Number 4 is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, a children's fantasy that is full of heart and whimsy and personality, and that immediately wiggled its way into my feelings. Number 3 is Signal to Noise by Sylvia Moreno-Garcia, a YA story of magical realism that centers around a group of teens growing up in Mexico City who can harness the power of music, but more importantly, they are growing up and figuring out all of the different capacities that we have to love and to hurt people. Number 2, although I rated it lower than the previous entry, is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. This is an adult literary fiction novel that simply tells the story of 2 friends who are growing up in Italy post-World War II. I'm going to give a full review of this book, but it's just lovely and impacting and complex, and I have not stopped thinking about this book. And in fact, the 2nd book in the series is the 1st book that I finished in February, so this has been all up in my head. And number 1, my favorite book that I read in the month of January 2016 was The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I want to do a proper review of this one too, but I don't even know how to gather all of my thoughts and feelings on this. I didn't expect to love it, but I do. I love it. I love the prominence of storytelling. I love Kvothe. I love the richness of the world and all of the details, and I just became an instant fan. My reading this month was dominated by fantasy and magic. Of those books that I mentioned, maybe 3 don't fall under the umbrella of fantasy or magic, though Signal to Noise does have that magical element. So probably just 2, Career of Evil and My Brilliant Friend. And My Brilliant Friend has this air of mythicism, and she just is, it feels like she's spinning a myth for you. So there very much was a feeling throughout my reading of this kind of super fiction. I'm not a huge fantasy reader. I'm the kind of reader that likes to jump from thing to thing and pick at a little bit of everything. I feel like that way it keeps my interest and it can satisfy whatever mood that I'm in. But this month I was just eating it up, and I feel like it was because my life was so stressful and so structured and so serious that I wanted my escapism to be extra escapey, if that makes sense. My favorite character of all of the things that I read this month was Kvothe from The Name of the Wind. I was talking to Kayla from Bookadoodles about how much I love the series, and she told me that there are people out there who do not like this character at all, and it blew my mind. And she was explaining to me that it's because he's arrogant and kind of a jerk to his friends, and at that point I could look back and say, okay, I see why people get that, but I didn't at all when I mean, he is arrogant and he is a jerk to his friend, but those came across as character flaws to me, and didn't ruin the entire character. Especially because we start the story with Coat, who is the humble innkeeper that Kvothe somehow finds his way to or turns into because of the circumstances of his life. So knowing that his journey, like, he's on top now, super arrogant, but knowing where it goes, you kind of get the sense of, you know, this is something that he got knocked down a peg or two for. So I mean, that's the way that I read it. I'm usually the one that doesn't like these kind of characters, so I don't know if I'm used to this feeling. Just kidding. I love Dawn from Buffy. Nobody likes Dawn, but I like Dawn, so I got used to the feelings of having to defend my baby while I was recapping Buffy. An honorable mention goes to Sophie from Howl's Moving Castle. I mentioned this when I wrapped up this book, but I loved Sophie. I loved Insecure Sophie. I loved Old Lady Sophie. I loved You're Not Gonna Kick Me Out of This Castle Sophie. I love that there is this young lady who gets cursed, but somehow that gives her the permission and the ability and the freedom to take control of her own life. It kind of reminds me of Never Been Kissed and the class that Michael Vartan is giving about costumes and how that frees people when they're in costume. My least favorite character was probably Aaron from The Knife of Never Letting Go. And this is not like a, oh, he's a villain, so he's my least favorite character. This is that I think that he was not very well done. He really pushes the line and becomes this mustache twirling kind of villain that is just impossible to get rid of. I didn't really buy his motivations. They were kind of there, but it just felt a little bit too forced for me. I was not a fan at all of the character of Aaron. Honorable mention for least favorite goes to Magnus from Rebel Spring. I cannot abide his brooding bad boy shtick. He needs to get over it. I'll close out by just letting you guys know a little bit what I'll be doing in February. I'm trying to make it to a Polycon in Georgia with a friend from my in real life book club, but I don't know if that's really going to be a possibility. I'm trying at this point. I stopped doing TBRs, but I ended up with 5 buddy reads this month, so there are 5 things that I know I'm going to read, hopefully at least attempt to read with my buddies. First up, for my reread project, I will be rereading The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. If you guys want to read this with me, whether it's your first time or you're rereading as well, please consider joining me. I will link the Goodreads group down in the description. It's a very relaxed buddy read. You have the whole month to do it. We don't go by any kind of schedule, and you guys can just come in and leave your thoughts as they're happening, which is what I did. I would just kind of read and make notes and then post it when I was done reading that chunk. So it's a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun, and I hope you guys did as well, and that you'll consider joining me for this next one. Next, I'll be reading The School of Good and Evil by Soman Chianani with a bunch of people, basically everyone who I roomed with at YALLFest or probably should have roomed with. I don't know how to describe us, but basically it's Sam from Thoughts on Tomes, Kristen from What's Happening, Lainey from Ginger Reads Lainey, Kayla from Bookadoodles, Riley from Riley Marie, and Connor from Connor O'Brien, and myself. A lot of us who were at YALLFest went to go see the Fairy Tales panel, and Soman Chianani was on it, and he was hilarious. Definitely one of the highlights of the panel, and probably his rant on The Little Mermaid was a highlight of the event itself for me. So I was very curious about his work, and I think a lot of us are, which is why we decided to read this all as a group. Next, I'll be reading book 2 in the Neapolitan novels with Max from Well Done Books, and in fact, we've both finished this as I'm recording. We finished last night. I stayed up late to finish it. I marathoned it like a champ, and feelings. We're not going to go directly into the third one. He has some other buddy reads. I have some other buddy reads, but next I'll be reading Six of Crows with a bunch of people. I think Samantha from Novels and Nonsense commented on one of Mike from Slice of Mike's videos about how she wanted to read Six of Crows too, and I invited myself in. I think a bunch of people jumped in on that, so it's Samantha, Mike, Trina from Between Chapters, Kirsty from Melbourne on My Mind, and our friend Wendy, who doesn't have a channel but she comments very frequently and she's very active on Twitter, so I will put links to all of that below. Also in that video from Mike, I asked Mike if he wanted to buddy read Moby Dick. I've never read it. I don't know that I will like it. I don't have like a big strong desire to finish it other than crossing it off a bucket list. Also, this book that is prominently featured on my shelf with the M is Moby Dick, so I feel like I should have read it. That's basically a TBR even though I'm not making them anymore. Buddy reads happen. If you guys have read any of the books that I've mentioned in this video, let me know down in the comments as always. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. If I fall asleep standing up, just comment, like, and subscribe anyway, out of pity.